I'm Robert.
And I'm Bless.
And welcome, dear listener, to the Reader's Mind Reviews. We are about to embark on a truly captivating journey, so don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon right now, ensuring you never miss a deep dive.
Today, we're pulling back the curtain on one of literature's most enduring figures, Sherlock Holmes. Our deep dive explores the original stories by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the detective's remarkable impact on forensic science, Doyle's often underestimated writing style, and how Holmes has been perpetually reimagined across generations.
Our mission for this deep dive is clear: to genuinely understand what has made Sherlock Holmes the world's most famous fictional detective and an indelible cultural icon. Even if you haven't read the books yet, stick with us. We're going to show you precisely why these tales are absolutely worth picking up and uncover how a character born in the late 19th century still feels incredibly relevant today, continuing to captivate readers and inspire countless adaptations. It's a story far more complex than just elementary.
Definitely. And to truly grasp the genius of Sherlock Holmes, we have to start at the source. His creator, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. It's crucial to understand that Doyle wasn't merely a storyteller, he was a scientist, a trained physician.
Right. That's often mentioned, but maybe not fully appreciated.
Exactly. This wasn't just a biographical detail, it was the bedrock upon which Holmes was built. Doyle envisioned a detective who would leverage science, which was, a revolutionary concept for crime solving at the time.
So setting him apart from the usual methods.
Fundamentally distinguishing him from the more, let's say, brutal, less analytical approaches prevalent in the policing of his era. Imagine a world where a detective could use meticulous observation and logic rather than just brute force to crack a case.
That's a fundamental shift, isn't it? It suggests a very deliberate intellectual foundation for the character, rather than just an intuitive approach to crime. Where did Doyle get this radical idea?
Well, that scientific rigor, that almost clinical precision, came directly from a pivotal influence in Doyle's own life, Dr. Joseph Bell.
Ah, yes, the famous Dr. Bell.
Doyle studied under Dr. Bell at Edinburgh University, describing it as a very severe and critical school of medical thought. Dr. Bell possessed what Doyle called remarkable powers of observation.
Remarkable how?
He could, astonishingly, deduce a patient's disease, their occupation, and even their place of residence just by looking at them, without a single word being exchanged.
Yeah, just by looking.
Just by looking. Doyle's aspiration was to create a hero who approached crime with the same scientific exactitude that Dr. Bell applied to medical diagnosis. For Holmes, science was meant to replace chance and guesswork.
Okay. So, from the outset, Holmes emerged as the first true scientific detective then.
Pretty much. Armed with an almost uncanny ability to make keen observations and then, crucially, deduce facts from what he had observed. It's truly the genesis of modern forensic thought woven into fiction.
That's a powerful legacy from a real-life mentor to shape such a fictional powerhouse who would then go on to influence real-world practices. It strikes me that this scientific grounding must have been precisely what gave Holmes his initial unique edge, even before the public fully caught on. He first appeared in two novels, A Study in Scarlet in 1887 and The Sign of Four in 1891. But if those were the introductions, what truly catapulted him into stratospheric fame?
His massive popularity and enduring fame absolutely exploded with the series of short stories. These began appearing in the Strand magazine starting in 1891.
Right.
And it was through these serialized adventures that Holmes truly became a household name.
And the Strand magazine itself was quite the phenomenon, wasn't it? It wasn't just a publication, it was like a cultural touchstone.
It was indeed. It was a monthly British magazine explicitly designed to appeal to a mass market. It was incredibly affordable, costing just sixpence.
Sixpence.
Which made it accessible to a wide range of readers. This accessibility meant its initial sales immediately hit nearly 300,000 copies. But that wasn't even its peak.
Wow.
Sales quickly surged to an astonishing 500,000 copies a month, a circulation it maintained robustly well into the 1930s. Think about that reach in an era without digital media.
500,000 copies a month. That's simply staggering for the time. What's truly fascinating about that is the inherent power of serialization, isn't it?
Definitely.
Readers weren't just buying a standalone book, they were investing in a monthly cliffhanger. Our research shows that people would literally line up outside the magazine's offices, just desperate to get their hands on the next installment.
Oh, yeah. Especially during the serialization of The Hound of the Baskervilles.
Exactly. That level of public engagement, that sheer hunger for the next part of the story, is something creators today only dream of capturing.
It speaks volumes about the gripping nature of these narratives. And then we come to the almost mythical death and return of Holmes.
Ah, the Reichenbach Falls moment.
When Doyle, perhaps feeling creatively stifled or simply weary of his most famous creation, decided to kill Holmes off in The Final Problem in 1893, well, the public outcry was immense.
People wore black armbands, didn't they?
They did. Fans incessantly requested more stories, protesting vehemently. Can you imagine the pressure on an author?
No kidding.
This unprecedented public demand effectively forced Doyle to reluctantly revive the character after 7 long years. This moment wasn't just a clever plot twist, it unequivocally cemented Holmes as an iconic literary figure, proving that he had truly transcended his creator and become an indelible part of global consciousness.
That really is the ultimate validation, isn't it? To have your audience demand a literary resurrection.
But beyond the character's appeal, let's talk about Doyle's writing style, because our research highlights its distinctive nature, even if it feels different to modern eyes.
You've hit on a critical point. While his style might, to some contemporary readers, feel a bit dated or even overly descriptive, what's truly remarkable is that Doyle was actually ahead of his time in a very deliberate way. Ahead of his time how?
His vocabulary, surprisingly, was quite tame compared to many of his literary contemporaries. This wasn't a lack of skill, it was a calculated choice to cater precisely to that wider mass-market audience we just discussed.
Okay, so aiming for clarity and reach.
Exactly. He wasn't trying to impress academics with obscure words. He was trying to entertain and be understood by everyone.
So, far from just elementary then. I mean, was there real literary craft beneath that accessible surface?
Precisely. There's nothing elementary about Doyle's prose at all. In fact, he was incredibly adept with a multitude of literary devices, often seamlessly interwoven into a single sentence.
Like what? Can you give an example?
Sure, you can see this mastery at work if you look at an excerpt from The Lost World, for example. He describes a character as a stunted Hercules, which is pure, sharp sarcasm, instantly painting a vivid, humorous picture.
Okay, yeah.
But then he weaves in elegant rhyme, like higher with shoulder and depth with breadth, which subtly guides the flow and makes even long sentences feel fluid. And to punctuate it, he uses alliteration with breadth and brain.
Huh. Rhyme and alliteration. I wouldn't have consciously picked up on those subtle touches without having them pointed out. That's a true masterclass in narrative control.
It's incredibly skillful, almost invisible in its effectiveness.
And what about the flowery and long-winded descriptions often attributed to Holmes' narratives? Our research indicates they aren't just stylistic quirks. They actually serve the plot in a very specific way, right?
They absolutely do. Doyle meticulously peeled back layers of details, characters, and events, guiding the reader through the mystery until the case fully unfolded, often culminating in the criminal's confession. It's like a slow, deliberate reveal.
A controlled reveal.
Exactly. Doyle was so confident in this approach that he even used Holmes himself as a mouthpiece to defend his style. In The Sign of Four, Holmes famously states, "It is simplicity itself, so absurdly simple that an explanation is superfluous, and yet it may serve to define the limits of observation and of deduction."
Huh. So Holmes is defending Doyle's style in the story.
Pretty much. He's essentially arguing that the perceived complexity or length of the description is what makes the ultimate simple deduction so impactful.
That's a fascinating meta-commentary from the author, delivered through his own creation. And that brings us directly to the narrative genius of Dr. Watson. He's not just a chronicler or a sidekick, is he? He's truly the voice in the reader's head.
That's a perfect way to characterize his role. Watson constantly asks questions and makes observations that a clever reader might be considering themselves.
Right, so you feel like you're figuring it out with him.
Exactly. This isn't just a clever literary device. It makes the plot less predictable and actively challenges the reader. Doyle wasn't trying to pander to his readers, making them feel instantly brilliant. Instead, he allowed them to participate and join the ride, engaging their minds directly in the process of solving the mystery alongside Holmes.
So Watson serves as our proxy, our eyes and ears.
Often articulating the very questions we're asking internally.
It's a remarkably interactive approach for the time, a real stroke of genius. And it wasn't just through descriptive prose that Doyle fleshed out his characters. He used dialogue in incredibly effective ways.
Absolutely. Take, for instance, a truly hilarious exchange from the second Professor Challenger story, The Poison Belt, between Summerlee and Lord John.
Okay.
Summerlee, with perhaps too much enthusiasm, asks, "Would it amuse you to hear me crow like a cock?"
Oh dear.
Lord John, clearly unimpressed, replies with a deadpan, "No, sir, it would not amuse me." Summerlee, undeterred, persists. My imitation of the clucking hen who had just laid an egg was also considered rather above the average, might I venture.
He's really pushing it.
To which Lord John, with definitive British dryness, states, "No, sir. No, certainly not."
That exchange just screams character. You immediately get a vivid sense of who these people are, their personalities clashing, without a lengthy description. It perfectly displays Doyle's mastery of fictional dialogue, building personality through interaction.
It truly does. He wasn't content just describing Summerlee as naive or Lord John as grumpy. He let their personalities shine through their distinct voices and interactions.
Yeah?
And this ultimately is a core part of Doyle's enduring literary craft. His legacy lies in his gripping narratives and memorable characters, which is precisely why we continue to see so many contemporary adaptations. Guy Ritchie's film series with Robert Downey Jr., CBS's Elementary, BBC's Sherlock.
All very different takes, too.
Exactly. Doyle's influence as a writer, whether you're focusing on detective stories, horror, historical fiction, or sci-fi, stems from his mastery of literary techniques, calculated narrative execution, exciting dialogue, and power to elicit terror and intrigue among readers. There's an entire curriculum for aspiring writers within his works.
Okay, let's unpack this. Holmes's core genius lies in his art of deduction, which he elevated to an art form. This idea of rigorous observation is central to his character, but it's more than just a personality trait, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's the very foundation of his revolutionary method.
He didn't just solve crimes. He fundamentally transformed the approach to criminal investigation. It wasn't about luck or intuition. It was about scientific method.
Precisely. His philosophy was that the grand thing is to reason backward, starting with the criminal act itself, and then meticulously working back through the evidence, the motive, and ultimately the culprit.
A profoundly scientific approach.
Yeah, and one that set him miles apart from traditional policing of his era.
And what's genuinely groundbreaking here is how many specific forensic techniques Holmes pioneered in fiction, introducing them to the public consciousness long before real-world law enforcement ever thought to adopt them.
It's quite remarkable. Let's delve into some striking examples.
I'm ready to be amazed. Which one should we start with?
Let's begin with fingerprints. Holmes identified and utilized fingerprints in The Sign of Four, published in 1890.
1890, okay.
He articulated the foundational truth that no two human fingerprints are ever alike. Now here's the kicker. Scotland Yard, the actual Metropolitan Police, didn't officially adapt this process into their investigative methods for another 11 years after that book was published.
11 years, wow.
And even then, Holmes himself rarely used them as the sole defining evidence. He always preferred a multiplicity of clues, always seeking corroboration.
Right, he wasn't just relying on one thing.
Yeah, never. We see this play out dramatically in The Adventure of the Norwood Builder, where Inspector Lestrade, a representative of Scotland Yard's methods, misidentified a bloody print, matching it to the obvious suspect, John Hector McFarlane. But Holmes, with his superior observational and analytical skills, was able to prove McFarlane's innocence, demonstrating the critical need for a comprehensive approach beyond a single piece of evidence.
So even then, he was showing the limits of just one clue.
Exactly. Today, of course, fingerprints are absolutely critical, stored in massive computer databases and analyzed in seconds, but as Holmes demonstrated, they still require corroborating evidence to truly tell the whole story of a crime.
That's astounding foresight on Doyle's part, putting it in print a decade before actual police forces caught on. What about the clandestine world of coded messages? That feels like something out of a spy novel.
It is, and it's another key area where Holmes was ahead of his time. In Victorian times, hidden clues often arrived in ciphers or coded messages, and Holmes was a master cryptanalyst. In The Dancing Men, he famously tackled 160 separate ciphers. Through his brilliant analysis, he determined that E was the most common letter in the English language, a fundamental principle of cryptanalysis that's still taught today, and used that insight to break the code.
That's classic code breaking 101, isn't it?
Yeah.
Frequency analysis.
Exactly. And in The Glorious Scott, he deduced messages simply by taking every third word. What's truly remarkable is that these exact techniques, pioneered in fiction, were later applied by real-world intelligence agencies during both world wars to decipher enemy messages.
No way.
Yes. And law enforcement agencies globally still use similar logical procedures described by Conan Doyle to this day. He was effectively a civilian code breaker before it was even a recognized field.
So he effectively invented a new field of investigative science in fiction. That's incredible. And footprints seem like such a basic, almost intuitive thing in detective work, but Holmes elevated them to an art form.
He certainly did. Holmes's fascination with footprints spanned his entire fictional career, from his very first case, A Study in Scarlet, all the way to his 57th, The Lion's Mane.
Wow, nearly all of them.
Well, in 29 of his 60 stories, footprint evidence was absolutely instrumental to solving the case. And these weren't just in mud or soil, as you might expect.
Where else?
Holmes found them on carpets, in snow, in ash, and even on drapes and doors. For Holmes, each mark was worth discussion. Each print told a story, providing crucial details about the perpetrator, their movements, or the sequence of events.
Every little detail mattered.
Immensely. He even supposedly wrote an educational treatise titled The Tracing of Footsteps, with some remarks upon the uses of plaster of Paris as a preserver of impresses.
He wrote a paper on it in the story.
Yep. And these very techniques, fictional at first, became a mainstay in preserving prints of shoes, tires, tools, and other depressions by police departments worldwide. He practically wrote the textbook for crime scene investigation before there was one.
That level of detail is just incredible. The idea that every tiny mark tells a story. And handwriting, that feels like a lost art today, but in Victorian London, it was everywhere, a truly personal signature.
Exactly. In Victorian London, handwriting was far more prevalent and could reveal a wealth of information about an individual. Holmes could deduce gender, class, and maturity of the author by meticulously inspecting pressure, angle, swirls, and consistency of the script.
Gender and class just from handwriting.
Apparently so, according to Holmes. He even made determinations about character or state of mind. In The Norwood Builder, he deduced a will was written under duress aboard a train simply due to imperfections in the scrawl, the telltale jolt of the train influencing the writing.
Okay, that makes sense. The shaky lines.
Right. Knowing such an important document wouldn't be transcribed so carelessly, he correctly assumed coercion. Today, handwriting analysis is still a vital tool in forensic science, used for identifying forgeries, for psychological profiling, and for detecting the influence of drugs, alcohol, duress, exhaustion, or illness.
Like in famous cases.
For instance, the ransom note left at the scene of the John Benet Ramsey murder, though inconclusive, was intensely scrutinized in attempts to tie it to one of the parents through handwriting analysis.
Right, I remember that. So what does this all mean for us today? Holmes wasn't just a fictional character, he was a trailblazer, wasn't he?
Absolutely. He introduced concepts that would eventually become standard practice in criminal investigation.
His ability to spot minute details that others missed, combined with his unwavering logical and rational mindset, allowed him to see patterns and uncover hidden motives that completely eluded others.
And what's truly fascinating here is how his fictional methods didn't just entertain, they directly inspired real-life forensic work.
So he truly transformed detective work from an art of guesswork and intuition into an exact science.
Pretty much. Moving beyond chance and brute force decades before actual police departments caught on. It's no exaggeration to say that his deductions laid the conceptual groundwork for how we think about crime scene investigation and forensic science today.
Okay, that sets the stage perfectly for digging into the character himself. Beyond the methods, who was the original Sherlock Holmes?
Now, let's turn our gaze to the complex characterization of Holmes himself, starting with the original version presented in the books. Our very first impressions of him in A Study in Scarlet come entirely through Dr. Watson's candid and often bewildered perspective.
Right, Watson is our entry point.
Exactly. Watson's colleague, Stamford, first describes Holmes as a little queer in his ideas, an enthusiast in some branches of science. His studies are very desultory and eccentric, but he has amassed a lot of out-of-the-way knowledge.
Desultory and eccentric doesn't sound too flattering.
No. He's also not a man that is easy to draw out, though he can be communicative enough when the fancy seizes him. Stamford even notes a certain cold-bloodedness and a passion for definite and exact knowledge pushed to excess, citing a disturbing anecdote about Holmes beating subjects and dissecting rooms with a stick to check for bruises.
Wait, beating subjects, like dead bodies, with a stick?
Yep. To see how bruises form post-mortem. Not exactly a warm and fuzzy introduction, is it?
A strange enthusiast with a stick in a dissecting room. That's quite a jarring first impression, one that certainly makes you pause and wonder what kind of person this is. So Watson's initial curiosity really deepens as he tries to unravel Holmes's peculiar nature.
Indeed. Watson's fascination with Holmes and his attempt to understand his aims in life leads him to meticulously compile a list of Holmes's knowledge, almost as if trying to piece together a puzzle.
Oh, the famous list.
For example, he notes, botany variable, well up in belladonna, opium, and poisons generally. Knows nothing of practical gardening. And chemistry profound. And perhaps most surprisingly for a man of science, sensational literature immense. He appears to know every detail of every horror perpetrated in the century.
Knows all the gory details.
Interesting. Watson also observes that Holmes is an accomplished violinist, an expert single-stick player, boxer, and swordsman with a good practical knowledge of British law. This list, though seemingly random, paints a vivid and quirky picture of a mind uniquely suited for detective work.
That list is absolutely priceless. It paints such a clear, albeit highly eccentric, portrait of the man. And how does this unique compilation of knowledge and his peculiar personality translate to his actual behavior during an investigation? Does he maintain that cool, collected demeanor, or does he transform?
Oh, he transforms completely when investigating a crime scene. The original Holmes uses his whole body in the pursuit of clues.
How so?
Watson describes him as trotting noiselessly about the room, sometimes stopping, occasionally kneeling, and once lying flat upon his face, seemingly oblivious to anyone else present.
Lying flat on his face.
Yep. He often mutters to himself with exclamations, groans, whistles, and little cries, completely lost in the intellectual puzzle. Watson, ever the astute observer, even compares him to a pure-blooded, well-trained foxhound as it dashes backwards and forwards through the covert, whining in its eagerness until it comes across the lost scent.
Wow, a foxhound. That visual really sticks with you, an almost primal yet intellectually driven approach. And what about his emotions and motivations? Does he show any outward excitement or satisfaction when he finally cracks a case?
Not in the conventional sense. Holmes is frequently described as having no trace of exultation or satisfaction, even when proving himself spectacularly correct. His drive is purely intellectual. The joy comes from the solving of the puzzle itself.
So it's the game itself he loves.
Exactly. However, he does exhibit profound emotional reactions when a hypothesis is challenged or a lead proves false, showing utmost chagrin and disappointment, gnawing his lip and drumming his fingers in frustration.
Ah, so he does have strong feelings just about the work.
Precisely. This implies that his strong emotions are reserved almost exclusively for the intellectual challenge of the case, not for common social situations or seeking public adulation. He's driven by the thrill of the detective work, not by financial reward or fame. It's an almost pure cerebral pursuit.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Many scholars argue that Holmes embodies distinct traits of the Byronic hero. This concept adds a whole other profound layer to his character, one that I'm keen to explore.
It's a remarkably apt comparison, and one that unlocks a deeper understanding of his enduring appeal. So to clarify, what exactly is a Byronic hero?
Lay it out for us.
Think of a grand, charismatic, yet ambiguous male character. They're often marked by melancholy, possess a dark or mysterious past, and deliberately eschew conventional societal norms.
Okay, it sounds a bit like Holmes already.
Right. They tend to be alienated, rebellious, frequently sarcastic, and can be quite theatrical and even seductive, often possessing a deep, quiet love for music or poetry. They're strong-willed but can also be arrogant, contemptuous of others, bad-tempered, cold, ruthless, and seemingly emotionless, yet they remain fatally attractive to others despite these flaws.
That description fits Holmes like a perfectly tailored coat. Let's break down some of his most prominent Byronic traits.
Well, first, there's his inherent complexity and mysteriousness. Right from the outset, Watson calls him a naughty problem and notes that his very person and appearance strike the attention. This sense of the enigmatic, of depths yet to be plumbed, is central to the Byronic hero.
Definitely mysterious.
Then there's his pronounced alienation and antisocial nature. Recall Stamford's early description that Holmes is not a man that it is easy to draw out, and Holmes himself admits in The Adventure of the Greek Interpreter. I was never a very sociable fellow, Watson, always rather fond of moping in my rooms and working out my own little methods of thought.
He definitely comes across as someone who prefers his own company and the labyrinth of his own mind to social niceties and his intellectual superiority. That's utterly undeniable, almost to the point of arrogance.
Completely. He openly considers himself intellectually superior to most, exhibiting a masterly manner in his interactions. Watson, who is not easily swayed, even goes so far as to call him the best and the wisest man whom I have ever known.
High praise from Watson.
Indeed. This self-assured intellectual prowess, combined with a certain aloofness, is a classic Byronic trait. His contemplative and even poetic side also fits this archetype. There are moments, particularly when he is reflecting on the nature of reality or crime, where he describes life as infinitely stranger than anything which the mind of man could invent, his musings almost theatrical and poetic in their delivery.
And what about the occasional illegal acts for justice? Holmes doesn't always play by the rules or the letter of the law, does he?
Not at all. Holmes occasionally commits trespass, burglary, and even unlawful detention if he deems it necessary for a case.
A vigilante streak.
A bit. He famously doesn't report all criminals to the police, believing that prison might actually deter the process of reform for some individuals. He has little respect for the abilities of Scotland Yard's men, often dismissing their methods as crude or unimaginative.
Right, he's often mocking Lestrade.
He essentially creates his own moral code, operating above or outside the conventional justice system, which is a definitive hallmark of the Byronic hero. And of course, his love of music is another Byronic touch. His ability to play the violin is revealed early on, a touch of artistic passion amidst his cold, logical pursuit of truth.
But here's the classic Byronic contradiction love. The Byronic hero is typically fatally attractive to women and often has a passionate, if complicated, female companion. Yet Holmes doesn't exactly fit that mold in a romantic sense.
This is precisely where Doyle cleverly adapts the trope. Holmes does not marry, and he does not try to seduce any woman. He famously harbors admiration for only one woman, Irene Adler, whom he simply calls the woman in A Scandal in Bohemia.
The woman.
But this admiration isn't romantic. It's born of profound intellectual respect. He values her intelligence, her audacity, her singular power to beat him, and famously states that love is an emotional thing, and whatever is emotional is opposed to that true, cold reason which I place above all things.
So brain over heart, always.
Pretty much. So no romantic interest, but a deep, almost unique respect for intellectual equality.
So if Holmes eschews romantic love, where does Dr. Watson fit into this companion dynamic that seems so essential to the Byronic hero? Is he just a chronicler, or does he fulfill a deeper role?
Watson acts as a friend substitute for the Byronic hero's typical female companion. While Byronic heroes can be dangerous or aloof to others, they are often tender and vulnerable with their chosen female counterparts.
Okay.
Holmes, similarly, displays a clear resistance to other companions, as evidenced by his cynicism towards Scotland Yard detectives. But he is undeniably fond of Watson.
You definitely feel that bond.
Doyle deliberately shows Holmes behaving very friendly towards Watson, shaking his hand cordially from their very first meeting. Holmes is clearly pleased by Watson's unwavering admiration, his practical physical assistance in cases, his readiness with a revolver when needed, and his sheer usefulness as a reliable witness.
So Watson grounds him.
In a way, yes. This observes the development of a friendship that fulfills some of that Byronic need for a close, trusted bond, even if it's purely platonic. It provides a human anchor for an otherwise solitary genius.
It's a fascinating reinterpretation of the trope, making their mere friendship so central to the narrative and character development. And that brings us to the evolving portrayal of Holmes in modern adaptations. It's a character that continues to captivate, leading to countless reimaginings across virtually every medium.
Absolutely. Conan Doyle's character holds the remarkable distinction of being the most portrayed human character in film and television, a truly staggering testament to his enduring and universal appeal.
Most portrayed human character. Wow.
Yep. Recent adaptations like FX's House, which ran from 2004 to 2012 and featured a Holmes-like protagonist.
Dr. House, yeah. Definitely Holmesian.
Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes film series starting in 2009, BBC's Sherlock from 2010 onwards, and CBS's Elementary, which began in 2012, are all distinct contemporary appropriations.
Right, they brought them into the modern world.
They set the stories in modern times, adapting Holmes's methods to available technology, essentially proving the timelessness of his observational skills and the enduring appeal of his logic.
Let's use Elementary as a case study because it truly redefines many aspects of the character while miraculously retaining the essential core. It's a bold reimagining.
Elementary takes significant liberties with the original setup, which is precisely why it's such an interesting adaptation. Here, Holmes is an ex-heroin addict who has completed time in an American rehabilitation clinic.
Quite a backstory change.
He's now living in New York with a sober companion, Joan Watson, who, notably, is a woman and initially not a doctor, though she later becomes one. This Holmes now consults for the NYPD, having previously done so for Scotland Yard.
And the first impression.
The viewer's first impression of Elementary's Holmes is quite striking. He's shirtless, covered in tattoos, watching 6 TVs simultaneously. He immediately deduces numerous incredibly personal things about Joan Watson upon their first meeting, which is jarring and impressive all at once.
That's certainly a bold departure from the original. It immediately hooks you with its freshness. And what are some of the key differences in his overall characterization in this version?
This Holmes is noticeably more empathetic than the original novel's version, particularly as written in Doyle's earlier works. After deducing a murder, he confesses with genuine remorse. Sometimes I hate it when I'm right.
That's a huge difference from the original's lack of exultation.
It is. A stark contrast. This contemporary Holmes is also childish in some of his attitudes and loses control sometimes, needing constant management from Joan. We frequently see him apologize for his behavior, admitting he acted like a spoiled child, which adds a layer of vulnerability and growth.
So Joan Watson's role is far more active than just a passive chronicler or occasional assistant. She almost feels like a co-detective, a crucial partner.
Precisely. Joan serves as an adult who can control the situation and bring a vital human perspective to Holmes's often detached logic. Her presence allows the narration of the crime within the television narrative, as Holmes himself mentions that simply talking to her helps him analyze and process information faster.
Talking it through helps him think.
Exactly, effectively externalizing his thought process. She later evolves significantly, becoming his apprentice and then a full partner, actively solving cases with him and even on her own, developing her own deductive abilities.
And his physicality and perception. Does that remain similar to the original, or does the show find new ways to portray his unique investigative style?
Yes, much like the original, Elementary's Holmes uses his whole body to investigate a crime scene, moving, kneeling, and scrutinizing every detail with intense focus. But the show innovates by employing internal ocularization.
Internal ocularization?
What's that? Using shot-reverse shot sequences to visually represent scenes from Joan's perspective. This is incredibly effective because it allows the viewer to share her initial, often bewildered reactions to his odd behavior, putting the audience directly in Watson's shoes and experiencing the awe and frustration firsthand.
Okay, so we see it through her eyes. Clever.
Very.
And the human Holmes, I heard that the original Holmes actually softens up quite a bit in the later books.
Huh.
Is that true? And how does it relate to why many adaptations might have portrayed him as so aloof for so long?
That's a critical point that clarifies much about his portrayal. The original Holmes does soften up quite a bit in the later books, particularly after WWI, showing more warmth and concern, especially for Watson.
Interesting. So he wasn't always cold.
No, but for a long time, only the earlier, colder, more aloof, almost machine-like Holmes was in the public domain for adaptations.
Ah. Copyright issues.
Exactly. That limited how filmmakers and TV producers could legally portray him. The later, more human Holmes, with his greater capacity for warmth and emotion, only entered the public domain in 2023.
Just recently.
This crucial detail helps explain why many adaptations before then portrayed him as emotionless and offbeat. His capacity for deep care for Watson, evidenced by lines like, "You're not hurt, Watson, for God's sake say that you are not hurt," truly shows his profound humanity, a side that became more explicit as Doyle continued to write.
That's a revelation that makes perfect sense of many adaptations. It explains why some Sherlocks feel so distant and others feel more relatable. It was often a legal rather than purely creative choice.
Exactly. It's fascinating how even copyright can shape character perception. Ultimately, both Sherlock's the original and Elementary's version, despite their wildly different settings and circumstances, share essential defining characteristics.
Such as?
Immense knowledge for detective work, a dedicated, almost animalistic approach to cases, and strong emotions deeply tied to their work. Elementary's Holmes, having hit rock bottom and navigated addiction, can be seen as a future version who has learned from his mistakes, acknowledges his limits, and is arguably more human and vulnerable, yet still retaining that core, unparalleled genius.
It shows the incredible adaptability of a character rooted in fundamental human fascinations.
It really does.
Okay, if we connect this to the bigger picture. Beyond character and method, a significant, often overlooked layer to the Holmes stories is their deep atmospheric connection to Gothic literature. This isn't just a stylistic choice, is it?
No, not at all. It amplifies their suspense and emotional impact, providing a foundational mood for many of the most memorable cases.
Makes sense, given the Victorian era.
It's absolutely true. The Victorian era saw a profound Gothic revival, which heavily influenced a generation of authors, from Dickens to the Brontes. Doyle's stories were published right during the peak of this wave, so it's not surprising that distinct Gothic elements appear frequently throughout his works.
Like, the goal wasn't just spookiness.
No, the primary goal of these Gothic elements in Holmes's stories was to create suspenseful and surprising narratives with a strikingly memorable detective figure who could ultimately overcome the seemingly supernatural with pure reason.
Right. Reason conquering fear. And our sources highlight a crucial distinction between terror and horror. How did Doyle masterfully use these two distinct emotional levers?
Very artfully. Terror is defined as the awful apprehension, the feeling of impending danger, creating an intangible atmosphere of spiritual or psychic dread. It's about what you don't see, but fear might be there. The anticipation of the horrific.
The fear of the unknown.
Exactly. Horror, on the other hand, is the sickening realization, a ruder presentation of the macabre created by visual atrocity and visual supernatural elements. It's the grotesque reveal.
Seeing the monster.
Pretty much. Doyle frequently employed classic Gothic devices, mysterious, archaic settings, often isolated country houses deep in the countryside, which provided a stark contrast to cosmopolitan London squalor and contributed significantly to the frightening atmosphere.
Isolated manor houses are classic Gothic.
Definitely. His stories also featured classic Gothic character types like tyrants, victimized women, and taciturn or drunken servants, all designed to heighten the sense of dread and vulnerability.
So let's walk through some specific examples. The Adventure of the Speckled Band is a classic for a reason, and it's quite terror-dominant, isn't it?
It sets the tone from the very first page. Helen Stoner arrives at Holmes's apartment, trembling, her face all drawn in gray with restless, frightened eyes like those of some hunted animal, and her first declaration is, "It is fear, Mr. Holmes, it is terror."
Straight out of gate with terror.
Immediately establishes an atmosphere of pure terror, largely due to the sheer ambiguity of her plight and the unseen threat. There's a powerful initial supernatural implication when Julia, Helen's twin sister, dies mysteriously after hearing a low, clear whistle at 3 a.m. in a house where there's no communication between rooms.
Right, the whistle in the night. Creepy.
And her dying words, "Oh my God, Helen, it was the band, the speckled band," intensely creates suspense and strongly suggests a supernatural cause for her demise.
And her stepfather, Dr. Grimesby Roylott, is a quintessential Gothic tyrant, contributing to that sense of dread.
Absolutely. Roylott, Helen's stepfather, is described as a man of immense strength and absolutely uncontrollable in his anger, known as the terror of the village.
Like a charming guy.
Not at all. He owns exotic and unsettling pets, a cheetah and a baboon that wander his grounds, adding grotesque and inexplicable dimensions to the household and contributing to the terror with their unfamiliarity and assumed fierceness.
A cheetah and a baboon. Okay, that's definitely weird.
Then comes a truly horror-inducing scene when Watson and Holmes, hiding, witness what seemed to be a hideous, distorted child that threw itself upon the grass with writhing limbs and ran into darkness. This visual frightening element, though later explained, truly invokes horror and even makes the usually stoic Holmes startled.
Even Holmes was shaken. But of course he provides the rational explanation, pulling back the Gothic veil.
Always. Holmes reveals the speckled band is a highly venomous swamp adder trained by Roylott to kill and recalled by a whistle. The hideous, distorted child was the baboon.
Ah, the baboon, right.
Roylott's death, with the snake wrapped around his head, is a moment closer to horror, but the story's overall dread is terror, driven by uncertainty until Holmes's brilliant, rational reveal. It's a perfect example of Holmes acting as a hero of rationality, conquering the seemingly irrational.
The Adventure of the Copper Beeches also has a strong terror element, and it introduces an interesting double motif that really heightens the psychological unease.
The setting alone is pure Gothic. It's a large square block of a house, whitewashed, but all stained and streaked with damp and bad weather, ominously located 5 miles from anywhere.
Isolation again.
Holmes himself, sensing the isolation, warns Watson, "Think of the deeds of hellish cruelty, the hidden wickedness which may go on year in, year out in such places." This immediately creates a strong feeling of insecurity and entrapment due to its remoteness.
That's a grim tone.
And Violet Hunter, the endangered governess, is the perfect, independent yet vulnerable Gothic figure, easily susceptible to dreadful things in such an isolated, controlling environment.
And the horror-inducing dog, Carlo, sounds absolutely terrifying.
Mr. Toller, the drunken servant, keeps a savage dog, a mastiff named Carlo, fed sparingly to keep him keen as mustard. Mr. Rucastle, the villain, ominously warns Violet, "For goodness sake, don't you ever, on any pretext, set your foot over the threshold at night, for it's as much as your life is worth."
Yikes, that's a direct threat.
Very direct. This strengthens the suspense.
Right.
There's also an uninhabited wing with a perpetually locked door where Violet hears sound of steps within the room and saw a shadow pass backward and forward, inspiring mad, unreasoning terror. This builds an incredible sense of foreboding before the reveal.
And the double motif you mentioned, that sounds like classic Gothic fare, adding a psychological dimension.
It's extremely effective. Violet's job bizarrely involves her mimicking a woman named Alice, who looks just like her. The discovery of an identical coil of her own hair in a locked drawer in the uninhabited wing, when her actual hair was still on her head and in her trunk.
Wait, her own hair? How?
Exactly. It creates profound extraordinariness and ambiguity, inducing a deep, unreasoning terror. Mr. Rucastle, the villain, further embodies the Gothic tyrant, displaying the face of a demon as he smiles while threatening to throw Violet to the mastiff.
Chilling.
Again, Holmes ultimately provides a perfectly rational explanation for all these seemingly supernatural occurrences, but not before the reader has experienced genuine dread.
Then there's The Adventure of the Yellowface, which has a more immediate visual supernatural element, leaning strongly towards horror from the outset.
Yes, the setting is an isolated, countrified house, perfectly suited for a Gothic atmosphere. But here, the overt supernatural implication manifests immediately when Mr. Grant Monroe sees an unnatural and inhuman face described as of a livid, dead yellow, and with something set and rigid about it which was shockingly unnatural, watching him from an uninhabited cottage window.
A yellow face. That's instantly creepy.
It's a very strong visual supernatural element designed to create instant horror. Monroe's wife, Effie, appearing with a deadly pale face in candlelight, clearly distressed and sneaking out at night, further adds to the suspense and sense of unspoken dread.
And the rational explanation for this horror is arguably more heartbreaking than any supernatural entity.
It is. The yellow face ultimately belongs to Effie's child from a previous marriage who is black and whom she is hiding from her new husband due to the intense racial prejudice of Victorian society, fearing his reaction and the societal condemnation. Oh, wow. So the horror was rooted in social issues.
Exactly. Doyle, through Holmes, once again grounds the seemingly supernatural in the very real, often cruel, social realities of the time, revealing a true human tragedy that is perhaps more shocking than a ghost.
Finally, The Hound of the Baskervilles for many, this is the epitome of Holmesian horror, and perhaps Doyle's most overt use of Gothic elements.
It absolutely is the strongest. The very legend of the Baskerville family is steeped in supernatural horror, haunted by a great black beast shaped like a hound, yet larger than any hound that ever mortal eye has rested upon.
The spectral hound. Iconic.
The ancient manuscript detailing its curse describes a visually horrifying encounter, strengthening the supernatural implication right from the story's start. Baskerville Hall itself is a classic Gothic setting, a gloomy, isolated hall situated on the melancholy moor, surrounded by jagged and sinister hills, ivy-covered, and often shrouded in a deathly silence.
The moor setting is perfect for it.
Watson's very first night there is filled with terror, hearing a woman's heartbreaking sobs echoing through the halls. And the footprints of the gigantic hound truly seal the deal on the horror front, making the supernatural feel terrifyingly tangible.
They do. The immediate discovery of the footprints of a gigantic hound at Sir Charles Baskerville's death scene powerfully reinforces the supernatural horror suggested by the legend. Watson's narrative, delivered through journal entries and letters, a fragmented narrative style, adds significantly to the Gothic atmosphere.
Like Dracula.
Reminiscent of Dracula, creating a sense of unfolding mystery and dread. But, as always, Holmes provides the ultimate rational explanation. The hound was a very real dog, cleverly made to look supernatural by applying phosphorus and other chemicals by the villain, Stapleton, who manipulated the legend for his own nefarious ends.
Phosphorus. Clever, evil trick.
Very.
So it seems Doyle consistently hints at the presence of the supernatural and crafts these incredible atmospheres, but he tends to provide a rational explanation in the end through Holmes.
Exactly. This narrative strategy serves a dual purpose. Firstly, it preserves the presentation of Holmes, who can solve many kinds of cases, as a hero of the rational over the irrational, reinforcing his intellectual prowess.
Keeps him grounded in science.
Secondly, it elevates the stakes. It's also worth noting that these horror-inducing Gothic elements appear more frequently in Doyle's later stories, which some scholars suggest might reflect his own growing personal interest in spiritualism.
Oh, interesting connection.
Ultimately, the skillful use of terror creates suspense, and horror pushes it to the extreme, making these cases more challenging for Holmes, and in turn, serving to highlight his unparalleled genius even more effectively, as he consistently brings light to the darkest corners of human evil.
What an incredible journey we've taken. From Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's scientific background influencing Holmes's revolutionary forensic techniques, to the detective's complex Byronic persona, a figure both aloof and deeply human, and the atmospheric Gothic elements that amplify the suspense and horror in his stories, we've truly seen how Sherlock Holmes became not just a character, but the very blueprint for every detective who followed, and why his influence remains so indelible on popular culture, continually adapting and captivating.
After reading and researching deeply, we discovered that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's stories are so much more than just clever crime puzzles. They are rich psychological studies, masterclasses in suspense, and profoundly insightful explorations of human nature.
Yeah, there's so much depth there.
This depth is precisely what ensures that even today, the character of Sherlock Holmes continues to thrive on screens and pages alike, perpetually fresh and compelling.
And if you're wondering whether this one's for you, we truly hope we've shown you what makes it stand out from anything else you've read. And I'm certainly hoping that if you haven't read any of these classic tales yet, you now have a real hunger to go grab a copy. You won't regret diving into this world.
For more Reader's Mind reviews, make sure to check out our thoughts on Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, Jane Eyre, and so many more, all waiting for you in the playlist. And if you've made it this far and still haven't subscribed, come on, do it for Bless's Book Collection Fund. Show some love.
What if the greatest detective's most profound legacy isn't just in solving crimes, but in continually evolving, adapting his very essence to reflect the fears and fascinations of every new generation, making him forever elementary in his core appeal, yet infinitely complex in his character? Think about that until our next deep dive.